You sometimes wonder what things would have been like if our species had never undergone those massive changes which are said to have occurred during the 1960s, if we just remained a sort of conformist, humble yet firm Christian nation as 1950s archetypes portray an ideal society as. If you feel as though it was better to live in that sort of world without the kind of pull, the seduction, the temptation of the exterior, the outside to that sort of rigid and conformist, somewhat repressive mentality, you could take the exterior as some sort of wicked tease and the actual idyllic 1950s environment as the only place where happiness can prevail, and that's why it was lauded and propped up, and why human development eventually led to that specific point in a very, it's like how Hegel thought that contemporary Prussian state was the greatest, so the human society felt as though its 1950s epoch, or at least as it was depicted in media, was so. And if you want to accept that 1950s world, which you probably never experienced statistically if you're watching this right now, as a paradise, then Gideon of Scotland Yard, Gideon's Day, is perhaps the perfect film for you. It depicts the engine behind a functioning society as they see it, and as many see it, to be fair. This law and order institution which upholds the right so that the good, nice people can function without having to be, suffer the consequences of the behavior of the criminally minded, let's say. It's a film about how conformity and an attempt to be well, virtuous, to fit in, is greater than those who attempt to disrupt and to, do things for their own sake. Well, that's a way of putting it. There are different desires which some want to conform, some want to rebel, some are genuinely antisocial and criminally minded. Although the character portrayed by Jack Hawkins, perhaps one of the 5 most watchable actors of all time in my opinion, he's most famous for possibly his role in The Bridge on the River Kwai. The character portrayed by Jack Hawkins, Gideon, Scotland Yard, title character, he seems like someone we might dislike now because he's very firm and oppressive, seemingly, and he doesn't, he's not like feeble or, gentle. He's very, very, very firm, and he believes in getting the results. He doesn't take things for granted. He isn't sympathetic to people who make errors and who aren't upholding the law as he sees it. This was considered very just at one time. Now it's considered quite potentially repressive and cruel. But there are still a great many who would see Gideon as an ideal model citizen for a society and for a police officer. Why did they want to burn it all to the ground, those who oppose this sort of vision? They would claim that it's not dissimilar enough to Nazi Germany, that the distinctions are wholly superficial and not relevant. I don't happen to feel that way, though I understand why we want a society to be as little like that Nazi state, as much as possible, and it's worth using that bad example in order to kind of examine ourselves. Where Gideon's Day, Gideon of Scotland Yard, goes awry with one's prospective vision of a contemporary society, perhaps, I don't know, perhaps, well, one understands that the dope they're referring to isn't cocaine, but I believe reefer rather, which isn't as much of a crisis as one would imagine a harder drug being, although nevertheless one doesn't encourage its use or distribution in certain quarters, as I believe that Gideon was predominantly concerned about in this film's storyline, which is totally understandable. Although there is a degree to which it's hard not to associate a police force from a certain idealization of right-wing, strong control over a society. Because, let's face it, Gideon of Scotland Yard is informed by a certain, I guess, at least softly, right-wing / conservative mindset, which some people just balk at entirely. I like the idea of finding some sort of equilibrium where, because in any society, even in an anarchist society, people would ideally prefer, if people aren't behaving in civil themselves, that there might be some sort of body which enforces a certain set code of conduct with certain training or authority that others don't have, in order to try to maintain a certain peace. No one, I don't think, disagrees with this. Gideon of Scotland Yard might depict a right-wing British subject's ideal kind of post-war 20th century society. And you know what? Insofar as it is depicted, a claim at accuracy in Gideon of Scotland Yard, you might say the real world doesn't function the way that film does, but if it did operate the way the film operated, it does seem paradisal in its own way. Like, sure, there's a certain Zen contentment in there'll always be human misbehavior, but there'll always be a law and order to try and protect it, and Gideon motivated by the love of his family. There is something wholesome and uplifting and empowering about the vision depicted in Gideon of Scotland Yard. Gideon of Scotland Yard is if the 50s was a happy place in spite of, without pretending it was a perfect place, it's depicting it as a happy place. At least the United Kingdom, which I'm sure would have been a lot more happier place to live than the United States at that time, or depending on what time in history. And Gideon of Scotland Yard, Gideon's Day, I can't remember the last time I sincerely felt as though, I can remember the last time, but it's an infrequent feeling, a feeling wherein you don't really want the film to end. You would prefer it if it kept going, just for your own entertainment's sake, really. It's such a satiating and thoroughly enjoyable time that one wants scenes to be added to the film. Surely there must be more to Gideon's Day. I want to see Gideon's Week. I want to see Gideon's Year. He is the most entertaining and likable character. He's gruff and firm, and he doesn't take no nonsense. But he's not cruel. He doesn't seem unkind. He seems as though a man who tries to do his best, is aware of his limitations, of his fallibility, and yet wants to do right because he wants a safe and happy place for his wife and children. When I was younger, I used to hope that a film like Reservoir Dogs would never end. The character dynamics were so electric, and the chemistry just would ooze out of the screen, and it was such a small scale premise, but the way they had all these exterior flashbacks and visions to the main event was such a tease to keep it going, but it has to end eventually. And Gideon's Day, it's that feeling as well. You want there to be more of it, but it is confined by the linear series of hours made up of a human allocated day. By that criteria, by the list of films that I don't want to end as they're going, just because I am having such a good time viewing them, such a wholesome, uplifting time, Gideon of Scotland Yard might make the top 10. I'll be damned. You know me. I feel a certain kinship with the likes of Guy Debord, although that stems from an adoration of cinema, and when you're such an admirer of that medium, you cannot help be enchanted and entranced by the Mr. Devout Catholic, conservative, and very, very brilliant Mr. John Ford. Thanks again, my good and dear friends. Appreciate it very, very immensely. Forgive me if you must. Thanks again.